brief, but very few of us intend to go to church on Sunday. I will give you a full dose. So let me see. How many of us intend to go to church on Sunday? Okay. I'll keep it brief. Thank you, Nelson. Nelson and I go way back, and we are buddies, neighbors, and it's just so exciting to see Nelson make amazing strides in the profession. I draw your attention to Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 to 16. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, verse 13 to 16. Matthew is found in the New Testament. The Bible has two testaments, the Old and the New. So Matthew is the first book of the New Testament. Chapter 5, verse 13 through 16. The Bible says this: you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city or a town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. As we celebrate this Easter cantata service, allow me to share some brief reflections from Christ's legendary sermon, popularly referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. Now, the Sermon on the Mount has held a primary place in the teachings of the church throughout the centuries. But even though it has enjoyed such popularity, it has not always been understood in the same way. Various scholars have regarded the sermon from numerous and even quite different and conflicting points of view. Suffice it to say that the Sermon on the Mount clearly sets out the tone of Christ's ministry. From our text in Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 to 16, Jesus uses 4 images to describe the life of his would-be followers. The usage of the definite article "the" is noteworthy when he says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. But he then uses the indefinite article "are" when he refers to us and says, a city on a hill, a lamp on a stand. So he uses 4 images: salt, light, a city, and a lamp. Please note that the 2 images that are used with the indefinite article "are" do not in any way de-emphasize the point he was communicating, but they actually serve to accentuate the same point. So the question is this: what point was Jesus making with this very eloquent discourse? Now, Matthew 5, verse 13 and verse 14 can best be restated as follows: ye and ye only are the salt of the earth. Let's try and say that after me. Ye and ye only are the salt of the earth. Let's try it.
Ye and ye only are the salt of the earth.
Thank you. Verse 14 would go like this: ye and ye only are the light of the world. Let's try that. Ye and ye only are the light of the world. You see, in Jesus' day, salt was a valued commodity, maybe more than fuel. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid with salt, believe it or not, giving rise to the phrase, worth his salt. Please note that Jesus never challenged us to become salt or light. Let me emphasize that. Jesus never challenged us to become salt or light. He simply said, we are. Neither have I come to challenge you to be salt or light. I've just come to state that you are salt and light. Whether we are living as salt and light is a different matter altogether. But it largely depends on our choice. It's largely a function of choice. Now, a key thought in both pictures of salt and light is the word distinction. Distinction. Salt is needed because the world is rotting and decaying. But if our Christianity is also rotting and decaying, it won't be any good, trust me. Light is needed because the world is in darkness. But if our Christianity imitates the darkness that pervades our world, then we have nothing to show the world. Don't you agree? Therefore, then, to be effective, we must seek and display the Christian distinctive. You and I can never affect the world for Jesus by becoming like the world. It doesn't work like that. Charles Spurgeon, who was referred to as the Prince of Preachers, had this to say on the subject. Hear this, ye humble men and women, ye who have met no figure in society. Ye are the light of the world. If ye burn dimly, dim is the world's light, and dense its darkness. If ye burn dimly, dim is the world's light, and dense its darkness. I know it sounds somewhat presumptuous to state that you are the Lord, the light, you are the salt. But these were the words of Jesus. When he looked around, he made it very clear that his audience carried the hope that he came to ignite in this world. Salt, light, a city, lamp. But for the purpose of today's discussion, allow me just to limit my reflections on the third image that Jesus used to describe his would-be followers, a city on a hill. As we discuss the subject, the Christian lawyer as a citadel of hope for our nation. What exactly is a citadel, you may ask? I know lawyers love definitions, so let me attempt a definition. A citadel is simply a fortress, typically one on high ground above a city. That's a citadel. So allow me to submit this to you. That a citadel of hope is a function of some fundamental traits. If you and I are going to live as a citadel of hope, we must emit some fundamental traits. The first one is this. A citadel that is a hope for a nation must be characterized by these three fundamental traits. Number one, fortified in its architecture. Fortified in its architecture. Number two, prominent in its location. Prominent in its location. And number three, promising in its existence. Promising in its existence. Let's look at each very briefly. Number one, fortified in its architecture. Jesus said, you are a city that is set on a hill, and you cannot be hidden. Those were the words of Jesus of Nazareth. You see, in ancient antiquity, cities were elaborate and imposing works of architecture and were simply impenetrable. I wish Putin had revised his history. He would have realized Kyiv was not just one that you just roll over easily. You see, classical architecture originated in ancient Greece and Rome. and was characterized by symmetry, columns, rectangular windows, and marble. Simply put, they were built to last. I keep laughing that architects of that time in Rome and Greece would have had a very difficult time wrapping their heads around collapsing buildings in cities, like it is the norm of our city, Nairobi. But in ancient antiquity, cities spoke of fortification. They were fortified in their architecture. Tim Newcomb concurs in saying this: suspension bridges, skyscrapers are marvels of modern engineering. But some of the world's most impressive constructions are thousands of years behind us. The Roman Colosseum is one such wonder of ancient architecture. We could go on and list architectural wonders like the Great Wall of China that was put up in 210 BC, the Temple of Hera that was put up in Italy in 550 BC, or the ancient Greek Parthenon that was put up in Athens in 432 BC. Just as these cities were fortified in their architecture, I believe so should our lives be fortified if we are to live up to our description as a city on a hill, a citadel of hope for our nation, because this nation needs lots of hope. And we look up to you. We look up to you to provide hope. But if we are to provide hope, we must be as fortified as those cities. In concluding his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus pointed out the secret to being fortified in our outlook, fortified in our engagement, fortified in our thinking, fortified in our conversations. This is what he said in Matthew chapter 7, verse 24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. On the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. Not just a rock, but on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand, quicksand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Jesus was pointing out that if you and I are going to withstand the storms, the currents that are designed to sweep us away, we must pay attention to his word and to his words. And we must seek to apply them in our lives, in our conversation, in our reflections. That his word should sharpen and influence our outlook. Fortified in architecture, but secondly, prominent in its location. A citadel of hope is a function of some fundamental traits. The second one is prominent in its location. Jesus said, you are a city that is on a hill and you cannot be hidden. Your location is prominent. See, such a city is prominent and can't be hidden. If you see such a city from a distance, it is hard to take your eyes off that city. You'll agree with me. In the same way, Jesus wanted the people of his kingdom to live visible lives that attracted attention to the beauty of God's work in their lives, when he referred to us as a city on a hill. Charles Spurgeon once again said, he was spot on when he said, Christ never contemplated the production of secret Christians, Christians whose virtues would never be displayed, pilgrims who would travel to heaven by night and never be seen by their fellow pilgrims or anyone else. That was never Christ's intention. His intention that it was you and I would live our lives publicly in such a way that people will be attracted to the values we exhibit. Jesus emphasized the need for a distinct saint and godly living when he asserted, "You are the light of the world." I want you to imagine him. He's seated up a hill with this crowd, and he begins to emphasize, "You are the light of the world." A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. That would be dumb, you agree with me. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Matthew 5, verse 14 to 16. My wife is a corporate executive in downtown Nairobi. And the experience of being a pastor's wife has been an interesting experience for the last 26 years. I know I look 25. Thank you for the compliment. Thank you very much for the compliment. But trust me, I've been a pastor for the last 26 years. And the pressure to conform has been real, particularly for her. To be Mama Kanisa. To be mom to everybody. But she stood so clearly because she had a call to the marketplace. And she said, "You know what, Patrick? That church has your pulpit, but my pulpit is downtown in the corporate world." And they told her, "Baby, go shine." And she's been shining there. This is your stand. Where is the light? We need to see some light. Jesus said this, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house." My Bible uses the word everyone. If your light is just shining on a particular geographical location, if your light is just shining on a particular tribe, that ain't light from God. God's light shines on everyone. Let's try and do it. Everyone. Jesus must have known that there will be those among his would-be followers who would be tempted to hide the light among them. That there will be some who would be tempted to scream at the darkness instead of turning on the light. That there will be some who would confuse his instructions to let your light shine. And imagine that he said, "Let your lifestyle be shiny." Let me try that again. Jesus did not say, "Let your lifestyle be shiny." He said, "Let your light shine." See, his word had nothing to do with our lifestyles or the lifestyles that we choose, but everything to do with the character that we reflect. And I'm calling us to reflect on the kind of character that we are reflecting. I'm almost done. Just as ancient cities were prominent in their location, so should our character be attractive, both at close quarters and at a distance, if we are to live up to the description as a city on a hill, a citadel of hope for our nation. You know, there are some lawyers and law firms that the public would rather touch with a 9-foot pole because their reputation stinks to the highest heavens. But there are some others who are just the mention of their names attracts approval and accompanying peace of mind. My prayer is that you will belong to the latter. Citadel of hope is a function of some fundamental traits. The last trait is that it must be promising in its existence. Not just prominent in its location, not just fortified in its architecture, it must be promising in its existence. Jesus said, "A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden." You see, cities in their very existence are a great symbol of hope. They represent promise, certain prospects. Even though this is sadly not always the case. But you remember your first time to come to Nairobi City? Some of you are behaving like you were born and bred in Nairobi. I know some of you. You came to Nairobi for your first time when you're coming to campus, to law school. And if somebody didn't accompany you, oh my, you'd have been lost. But you came to town because of the promise that the city offered. The promise that this city represented. I hope and pray that you realize that promise. Need not to remind you that the growth of slums emanates from rapid rural to urban migration, economic stagnation, depression, high unemployment, poverty, an informal economy, poor planning, politics, bad politics, I should say, natural disasters and social conflicts. These are some factors that influence movement from the rural areas to the urban cities. It wouldn't be an overstatement if I said that the over 2 million slum dwellers in Nairobi came to town in search of greener pastures. Do you agree? They grew up with that one ambition, to break free from poverty and hopelessness that has